was sitting at his desk on that first morning, and the telephone rang. He kind of perked up and listened. The clerk picked up the phone and said, "Airport maintenance." And he cocked his head and got up and stood at the doorway. She listened and said, "We'll take care of that, sir. Thank you very much for reporting it. We'll have somebody come out and check it out." She hung up the phone, and Sam said, "From now on, you will refer to this office as the airport manager's office." She looked at him and she said, "But Mr. Cooper, we've always called it airport maintenance." Airport maintenance is located on Scottsville Road. This is the airport manager's office. Now, what Sam did that day was change the culture of the airport, of airport management. This is nothing against the people that were in charge of the airport before us, but they had a caretaker concept of what their job was. Basically, they were the keepers of the field and the buildings and the fixers and the doers. And that was their job. There was no particular thought given beyond taking care of the property. What Sam came to the airport to do was to turn it into the new building that we have now. He changed the culture and said, "I am the manager of this facility, of this 1,200-acre facility that has several hundred employees, and I am in charge of all of the activities that take place here. And therefore, this is the airport manager's office, and this is how we will conduct business from here on in." And the employees of the airport had a hard time getting used to that. His first orders, he was a Navy guy, his first orders were basically all hands. He immediately got what's the union, a grievance. He immediately got a grievance. "Do not call us all hands." So that was, it was hard on the people who worked at the airport, worked for the county. But it was a cultural change that needed to take place. The county at that time the airport was $1 million in debt every year. Airports are supposed to break even. The idea of an airport is that it's supposed to take in money and be able to break even between revenue and expense. Now, it's not inappropriate if it doesn't, because it is a public service, and to that extent, the public does have a responsibility to take care of it if the community needs the airport. And the businesses in the community needed the airport. But we were $1 million a year short, and we knew we had to do something about that. So, very early on, we decided that the contracts that were underway basically were the contracts from when the building was built in 1953. Sky Chef, for example, provided all the food service, all the retail service, all of the airline catering. They came to Rochester not having any idea of whether they'd be successful or not. So the county gave them a very lucrative contract. Now, they did a great job, but they weren't paying us what we needed. We decided that we needed to take every contract and test the market. Is there someone else that's willing to do this and give us more money and still be good? It wasn't a case of dropping the level of service. It was a case of getting the revenue up where it belonged. The major example of this was Sky Chef, in that nobody knew how Sky Chef operated. You know, we weren't restaurant people. I was told I was called into Sam's office. The Director of Public Works was there, and Sam and the Director of Public Works said to me, drop everything that you're doing, turn it over to somebody. I don't know who I was supposed to turn it over to because there was only 2 of us. And you will be responsible for this all the way through, beginning to end. We want you to learn all about the restaurant business, write the specifications, manage the process of taking it to bid, and analyze the bids to determine whether we can get someone else. And that took a year. It was a real education. Believe me, it tested my ability. And we got 2 bids. One, of course, was Sky Chef. They offered us a slight increase in pay, in rent. The other was a place called ARA. We didn't know anything about them. They offered us 30% of gross revenue and said that they would put over $1 million of their money into renovating the facilities. Too good to believe. We literally did not believe them. It took several months to really find out that they were a credible company, that they had experience in other airports, and the other airports thought that they were great. And it was a year before we got them to come into Rochester. So that was the example of how we were able to improve our revenue situation, one contract at a time, basically. The parking lot operation, it was a national firm, and the national firm was outbid by a local firm. We were concerned about that. We didn't know what they would handle situations, but A&M Parking has been around Rochester a long time. They knew their way around the politics, which is what you have to do in Rochester. And they have done a phenomenal job over the years, and they handed us a lot more money. There was that whole aspect of managing the contracts and all, but there were also breaks in the routine. There were times when somebody came into town. The president, from time to time, came into town, particularly at campaign time. Presidents Carter, Ford, Reagan, and Bush Sr. came into Rochester. Now, typically, when they came in, the Secret Service came in 3 days in advance. We would see 3 suited men walk through the front door, and there's something about the Secret Service that you know they're the Secret Service. You just do. And they said, we want to talk to the airport manager. And I went, go talk. 15 minutes later, Sam came out and said, the president will be here in 3 days. And then 3 days of scramble took place, and I might as well put everything away because nothing was going to get accomplished other than taking care of the Secret Service. They had to make sure everything was safe. And when they were finished with the airport, they went downtown or wherever the president was going to go. We had, you may recall, there was a time when 52 Americans were kidnapped in Iran for 444 days. The commanding officer was Colonel Schaefer from Rochester. And he came through, he came home. Lou Morin met him at the airplane, walked him in, escorted him in. He walked through our office complex, and a few people had come together. I had brought my wife and one of my children in so that they could see. He walked up to my daughter. She was 6 years old. He picked her up and he said, "This is what I missed most." And that, in our family, that's right here. That thing was, that was a special moment in our family. She put her down, thanked us, and went on and had a press conference. Mrs. Carter came into town one time. She was traveling on commercial flight. The flight was late. They, rather than have her wait in the waiting room, they gave her a room to sit in where she could have the privacy and security. Sam says, "Rick, go down and spend some time with Mrs. Carter. We don't want her to be by herself." So we had a lovely 30-minute conversation and just really enjoyed it. When she got back to Washington, she autographed one of her photos and sent it to me, which that was one of my claims to fame for a little while. We've had cars in the terminal. About midnight, I wasn't there at the time, but about midnight one night, some girl decided that she was going to leave her boyfriend, and she was going to leave Rochester. And he kind of got stewed up a little bit at a bar, got in his car and came to the airport to rescue her, to bring her back. And it must have been a small car, I presume I'm thinking something on the order of a Volkswagen or something small. The automatic doors opened in front of the American Airlines ticket counter, and he drove right through. He made a right, he did not use his signal. He made a right and he drove down the main lobby, made a left, and ended up in front of security. At that point, a brand new part-time deputy who was a senior at MCC in the police division, they were getting internship practice. That poor sucker had to confront this guy. And I'm told he came up to the car, and as he got his gun out, and he goes, "Get out of the car." I'm sure that's a horror story that his family tells him, because I'm sure he'd like to not tell anybody. Next picture. Here we got one of our fire trucks, and that's Pluto, and Pluto and I are saying goodbye. Sam, the Walt Disney came into town, and they had a program, and the next morning they came in, and before they left on their charter airplane, Sam asked them to suit up and entertain our troops. So they came around, drove around, and made the employees happy for a while. When they got done with this, Pluto and I had become fairly good friends, and we had a very nice goodbye. He's a good friend. Let me change to security. Security is an issue that people like to be a little bit aware of. When I worked for the airlines, it was hijackings during the 60s. The hijackings basically teared off and mostly became passé. And about the time that I went to work for the county, we were having bomb threats. 1973, my first year with the county, we had 11 bomb threats in our terminal building. And I can guarantee that none of you, had you been there, would have known that we were doing an inspection, and we were responding to a bomb threat. Whoever is in charge of this room is the person who needs to come into this room to determine if there's a bomb. Basically, they know what's here, and they can identify what isn't supposed to be here. And that was the system that we had. A person might walk up to you and say, "Is this your bag?" And you would say yes, and thank you very much. And then they move on. If the bag was not identified by anyone, that person would call it in, and then the bomb squad would come. But most of the time, those were fake bomb threats. They were people that were having a good time. Until December 30th, 1975. A bomb went off in LaGuardia Airport. It was placed in a luggage container near the luggage reclaim area, and there were, how many? 11 people died, 75 people were injured. This was 2 days before New Year's Eve. Now, every airport has copycats. After there's a bomb threat and it's publicized, the airports tend to get another bomb threat. On New Year's Eve, my wife and I had just gotten to a friend's house for a midnight party, for a New Year's Eve party. And the telephone rang and they called me over. Rick, we have a bomb threat. I kissed my wife goodbye, said I would try to be home by midnight, and headed to the airport. We searched the entire airport, and about 11:30, the all clear came. Sam said, we're good. We can go home. The telephone rang. The dispatcher took the call. He came off the call and he said, Mr. Cooper, that was the same voice as the previous call. And he said it was going to go up at midnight. Sam looked at me and he said, we are going to evacuate the terminal. Now, ordinarily at midnight, this would not be an issue. But this was New Year's Eve and Sky Chef was having one heck of a party going on. Well over 100 people were being entertained and enjoying a New Year's Eve party in the Cafe Evian. I had the honor of going up and telling the hostess that she had to tell them to leave. You gotta be kidding. No, I'm not kidding. Tell them to get up, take their things, and leave the airport right now. They're to go to their car, get in it, and leave. Don't stay in the car. We told the parking lot operator, lift your gate, let them go. They all left. Sam and I were out of the terminal building. We're at a safe distance away from it, and he turns and he looks at me and he says, okay, Rick, which end is going up? We were positive we were going to have a bomb that night. That was pretty thrilling. Sky Chef lost thousands of dollars that night. But I gotta say, there were a reasonable number of people that came back and said, I owe you some money. And that really does your heart good when people do that, because they could have got away with not paying. Next one. This is the airport terminal. After some of the airlines had added on, there was about, at this point, there was about 100,000 square feet of space in the terminal building. This is a terminal that you probably remember as the old terminal. This was in operation up until 1989, at which time we demolished it and on exactly the same footprint built what we have now. That was a real challenge. 1989, Sam retired. I took over as airport manager, and let me back up. On the way there, I almost missed this. Next chart. The Deregulation Act of 1978 was an act to basically disengage the Civil Aeronautics Board from the airline's activities. It was important that they be controlled early on when nobody knew what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. But after years of experience, people realized that the airlines knew what they were doing, and everyone was getting tired of the airlines having to go back to get permission to land at this place or not, or to stop being at this place, or to raise their fares. And the Deregulation Act of 1978 was passed. It took a couple of years before the impact started to hit Rochester. Now, airlines were able to leave a place, and the big airlines ran out of the places where they were losing money. Little airlines that wanted to get bigger were coming in and saying, we'll take their place. New airlines were opening up and saying, we want to be an airline. A man came into Sam's office one day. He said, I have an airplane. I'm a pilot, and my wife is a flight attendant. I want to start an airline. Sam goes, it takes a little more than that. I built this chart to give you a sense of what we had, because quite honestly, during that time frame of basically 1980 on, there were times when I didn't know what airlines we had. They came and went that fast. We had, I think there's 13 or 15 or something like that airlines that came and went. They were here for various periods of time. Some of them were successful, some of them were not. There were a lot of bankruptcies. There were some that got pulled in. They came and they were successful and they got pulled into a larger airline. United, Allegheny, US Air, Eastern came in. They were planning on coming in anyway. Then we had Air North, Brockway, Mall. They were the tiny little airplanes that, when an airliner had a delay or cancellation, and they would book them on one of those airlines, the passengers would come to the door and go, "Is that the airplane?" And they go, "Yeah." "Oh no." People didn't want to travel on those tiny little airplanes. Empire Airlines came. I don't know if you recognize some of these names. Empire came. Air New England was here for a short time, about a year. Altair, Business Express, Best. Best was only mediocre. New York Air, Piedmont came in. I worked really hard to get Piedmont in here. Everybody wanted them, and it took I got them, but that was a lot of hard work. Republic Air, Northwest came in. People Express came in. Let me back up for a minute. When I was in college, finishing up I got my bachelor's degree at RIT. I was taking a course in transportation management in economics. And I came home one night and I said, you know, it's ridiculous what the airlines do. They feed the passengers, they do this, they do that. They should be point A to point B. Give them a seat, let them fly there. Don't charge them an excessive amount. So that was when I was a student and I was writing a paper. People Express came in, went from point A to point B, charged $29 to New York City. $29. I went home and I went, oh my God, we're turning into the Greyhound station. My wife looked at me and goes, what happened to point A to point B? She got me. People loved People Express. Trouble was, some of the trouble was that people didn't realize they went to Newark, not New York City. And if you were going to New York City, you didn't know what to do once you got to Newark. They had no connections with other airlines. They were doing well until they got a 747 and decided to go overseas to Great Britain. And that killed them, in my opinion. I'm not a financial guy, but in my opinion, that's what killed them. They had a good thing going, and it didn't turn into Greyhound. So I thought that it would be interesting to see the various airlines that came and went during a course of about 10 years or so. 1989 came, Sam retired. I became the airport manager, and we started a $104 million expansion program that was going to take 3 years. I was part of the team that was responsible for planning and doing this project. My primary responsibility, in my opinion, was not so much the construction aspect as it was the safety aspect for the passengers. I decided that our job at the airport was to make sure that when you came in from the street, you had a safe journey through all of the construction, which changed every day, to the airplane. That you had a safe passage through there, and that it was always safe and always well signed. There's nothing a passenger hates more than having lousy signage in the terminal building. And we made sure that with all of the gate changes that took place, we had signage that told you exactly where to go for your airplane. And I was pleased to know from a number of businessmen that came through the airport that we were very successful at doing that. That really made me feel good. This project was a series of projects. Now, mind you, I already said this was built on top of the old airport terminal. So they demolished the terminal building and built the new, all in one place. There were several phases. There was the changing the entranceway, and so that you looped down closer to the railroad tracks, and then had to drive it. Drove in a straight line drive-in to the front of the terminal, which now was a bridge, because they now had a 2-level terminal. So they had to build a bridge. The terminal building, the first piece of the terminal building was the new wing over here, because there was nothing there, so that made it easy. Once that was done, we were able to start passengers through there and take down the west half of the main lobby. Having gotten that complete, we took down the east half of the main lobby, and the final phase was the United U.S. Air Wing over on the left. The white is the original terminal building. The black is the additions, understanding, of course, that now it's 2 levels. We went from a 100,000 square foot to a 300,000 square foot terminal building in the course of 3 years. We obviously, when you go change the size that much, your janitorial staff is going to have to increase. So we put in the budget for additional janitorial staff, and it was approved on paper until we actually needed them. And then the county said, no, you can do it. Your staff can do it. Find another way. Well, I decided that the most appropriate thing to do would be to put the county personnel on the day and afternoon shift, and to hire contractors to do the midnight shift. The midnight shift is the heavy floor cleaning. It's a different kind of cleaning, so it could be done independently of the others. The custodial staff came to me and said, no, it's our airport. We will do what we have to do to keep it clean. Now, this is a time when Bob King had started total quality management and employee empowerment, and he was really stressing that in every department. And these people were saying, we can do it. I went to him and I said, you gotta give him a chance. You can't say no. He said, okay, they've got 90 days to prove it. So I went back, I said to them, I'm going to give you a facilitator who understands teamwork. That will be your liaison to my office. I will buy whatever equipment you need and can justify. I will get you whatever services you need. I will stay out of it. This is your job. This is your project. I will keep clear of it because you guys know what you want to do. And that worked for a while, and it was working well. And then one day, I don't know exactly what it was that went wrong. I think it was, my recollection is that it was one of the front doors. And they did something that I thought could have been done better. And I interjected myself into it. And they came to me and they said, that's it. You said you were going to leave us alone. You said you were going to let us do it. You said that we were supposed to do it this way. We're quitting. I met with the entire crew. Basically said, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I interjected myself and I should not have. And I apologize for that. You guys are doing a great job, and I want you to continue doing that job. 50% of them wanted to continue, 50% of them wanted to go home. One man who had just come off of welfare stood up, pounded the desk, and said, I have never been successful at anything in my life, and I want to prove to my children that I can do this. We need to do this. And I got to tell you, a tear came down right here because he has so much courage doing that, and he convinced them to continue. And a year later, they received a national award for janitorial services, a national award for the teamwork in the janitorial services. I was very proud of them. So, next. Airport, 1921. Airport today. Rochester, you've come a long way, baby. Thank you. I'm available for questions, whatever questions you might have. Thank you very much. Yes, I have some books over here. The airport book, The Rock, which is the history of the airport, and it's not a history book. It's a story about the history of the airport and the people that developed it. My friends told me, do not write a history book. I was actually, I